Welcome to the Virgin River recap. After a devastating heartbreak, Big Shot city nurse and midwife Mel moves to the small town of Virgin River. Her car breaks down during this trip, and as she is there for a job listing as a nurse, a kind townfolk gives her a ride down to her accommodation, only to discover that the quaint house is nothing but it seems. Hope, the recruiter and the wife of the late Dr. Mullins, apologizes as the house isn't ready, so they set her up in a hotel room, Joe Ellen's hotel, the only one in town. Mel meets Jack, the owner of Jack's bar, and the barman Preacher. The rough small town life takes a toll as Mel meets Dr. Vernon Mullins, the elderly man who drove her into town, refusing to allow her to work on patients until Hope talks some sense into him. At his age, he needs help at the clinic, and after an abandoned baby named Chloe is left at their doorstep, Mel is the only person able to take care of the baby. They realize the baby's mother is named Lily, living on a farm alone, and the recent passing of her husband Buck has been difficult, adding to the postpartum depression and not having any family or friends to talk to. Mel suspects that Lily is feeling incapable of taking care of the baby. They set up a plan for Lily to get therapy and a family member to take care of Chloe in the meantime until she is ready to take care of Chloe. Thanking her for this, Vernon becomes more receptive to Mel. Meanwhile, Jack starts to develop feelings for Mel. As they are out one evening, they are held at gunpoint by Jimmy, forcing them into his truck, and Mel is made to treat Calvin, the ringleader of their drug operation. They hope that their makeshift bandage can save his life. As they go to leave, they hear shouting. Maxine is giving birth. Mel successfully helps her give birth, but losing tons of fluids, she is urged to leave and go to the hospital. Jack and Mel have been missing for days. Vernon comes down to the illegal pot plantation to force Calvin to let them leave. They have a deal where Vernon will turn a blind eye to his drug operations, and in turn, Calvin allows Vernon to treat the population stuck there. Worried about her sister, Joey leaves the city life to visit Mel, and after a short dance with Brady, the night is cut short when Mel figures out that Joey and her husband are having marital problems, and that she might be getting a divorce, and she leaves the next morning to go figure out their problems. At the bar, former Marines, Jack and Preacher take Brady in to work at the bar. Surviving war molded them together, and Jack still has PTSD from losing Lonergan. He blames himself for this. Preacher is against Jack helping Brady, as the last time he did, Brady took it for granted. Hope, the self-elected mayor who ran uncontested, is part of the Gossip Girls. When drama or a minor dispute breaks out, word spreads fast through the town. Breaking up with his girlfriend Charmaine, Jack and Mel begin to hook up, until he realizes that Charmaine is pregnant. As Jack discovers that he has twins on the way, he tries to accommodate Charmaine. Mel sees no future in them being together, until their emotions get in the way and she falls for Jack once more. Charmaine, realizing the error in her way, decides to take up a cousin's offer of moving to Oregon, telling Jack that she wants a husband that will love her and the twins unconditionally, meaning Jack will barely be in their lives. Mel struggles to overcome her past. She once had a stillborn and learned that she would be unable to birth any more kids. Believing in miracles, she pushed her husband Mark to keep trying. During this conversation, they got into a fatal car crash and Mark passed away. Not as helpful when Mark's sister Stacy visits to ask for her grandmother's ring back. Knowing that Mark proposed to her with it and that he would want her to keep it, she refuses. A fentanyl incident occurs, where a drug addict breaks into the clinic and almost kills Mel. Jack manages to scare him off. Fearing what could have occurred, he contacts a former Marine and friend turned LAPD detective Mike Valenzuela, giving him intel on a massive drug ring run by Calvin. After showing up late multiple times, Brady quits working at the bar. He tries to earn more money and starts to work for Calvin. He's employed in Emerald Lumber and will be their middleman into purchasing anything in Virgin River, giving him a hint that they work in fentanyl. To earn Calvin's trust, he has to kill Spencer. After Calvin poisoned guests at Jack's bar, Jack started to try and get Spencer to cooperate with the police to ensure Calvin went to prison. After a minor talk with Brady, Jack figures out that Spencer, Maxine, and their child are secretly on a bus to LA. Meanwhile, Ricky is growing up and starts to date Connie's grandchild, Lizzie, a new teenager that got sent to live with Connie because her parents are tired of her misbehaving. They fool around and do all sorts of teenager stuff that Connie doesn't approve of. Anyways, Preacher has a crush on Paige, a baker. One day, he discovers her real name, Michelle. Searching her up in the database, she is wanted for kidnapping Christopher. Confronting her about this, she admits that her husband was abusive and he won custody of their child because he is a detective. Unable to live with that, she took Christopher and ran. He has been hunting them ever since, begging him to keep it quiet, and he obliges, until Wes Logan, her husband, finds them. An accidental push down the stairs causes his death. Calling Preacher, he agrees to cover it up as he urges them to run, covering up his death as a driving accident. Later on, Vince, Logan's twin brother, comes around to the bar, warning Preach that he is onto them. Since Michelle had been on the run, their cover with friends is that she is helping her father out of the country. Christopher stays with her friends and sometimes Preacher, only Connie knows the truth of the entire situation. And she also helps run the bakery now that Michelle is gone. Going out with the Marine friends for a weekend, Detective Mike reveals that he knows Calvin's scheme. He smuggles money through the lumber, and the cartel sent him fentanyl in return. They are getting ready for the raid. The caveat to their operation is that they have to arrest Brady. Accepting the news that Charmaine won't allow Jack to visit the twins much, Jack and Mel hook up, and they decide to grab steaks at the bar. As Jack heads off first, Mel arrives to find Jack shot and bleeding out. The story fast forwards a few weeks. Jack has recently fully recovered. The raid was a bust because Calvin got tipped off and no drugs were found. Now Jack and Mel are fully open about their dating to the public. Meanwhile, Charmaine is still pregnant with the twins and has a new fiance named Todd, a rich country club control freak. She decided to compromise with Jack being injured and stay in Virgin River at his house, which he would move out of to live with Mel, until it burns down due to faulty wiring. He has removed her dog and decided to get Jack out of the twins' lives by moving to Eureka, hundreds of miles away from Virgin River, and in a rough patch between Jack and Mel's relationship, they decide to break up, wanting different things. Mel wants to carry a baby of her own, and Jack thinks that taking care of both families will be too taxing on him. Mel remembers that she still has Mark's sperm and goes through with the procedure. Lily gets a devastating diagnosis and confides in Mel. She has stage 4 pancreatic cancer and has chosen not to fight it, so the people she loves won't suffer as she deteriorates. And as word spreads about her minimal amount of time left to live, the community tries to support her, and especially her daughter Tara and granddaughter Chloe. Detective Mike investigates Jack's shooting intensely, noting that after the severe traumatic incident, he forgot all recollection of it. With Bree, Jack's sister, being in town, he discovers that she has a Xanax problem she used to deal with her abusive ex. She had quit her expensive lawyer job and moved to Virgin River to start and date Brady. Recognizing a hoodie on Brady, he remembers him from the night that he got shot. Assuming that Brady shot him, Mike gets a search warrant to go through Brady's items, finding a pistol with the same caliber as the one that was used to shoot Jack. He is arrested for attempted murder. Preacher meets up with Sally, a friend of Michelle, to orchestrate a meeting with Michelle, only to be drugged and left for dead. Vince had tracked down Christopher and takes him from Connie. Hope has been visiting a friend and got caught in the middle of a hurricane. As she travels back, she enters a horrific accident, and the doctors are unsure if she will survive with the severe brain damage. In Ricky's relationship, he confesses that he wants to join the Marines, and Lizzie breaks up with him for keeping it a secret and always lying to her about it. One night when Doc is over for dinner, Lily suffers a stroke in her sleep and passes. As they hold the memorial service, Mel helps Tara give her eulogy, and at the funeral, getting newfound knowledge that he should cherish the ones he loves, Jack apologizes to Mel and they make up, only for him to find out that Mel is pregnant. He is ecstatic to have another family, only that he doesn't know who the father is. Also, a random kid shows up claiming to be Dr. Vernon's son. Hope manages to survive her traumatic brain injury. She spends the future trying to recover her motor functions and memory loss. Dr. Vernon is diagnosed with macular degeneration, a disease that could cause him to go blind. He deals with this by getting treatment and hiring a new doctor to work at the clinic, Cameron. With babies on the way, Jack decides to develop a new income stream, teaming up with Nick as an investor, and they are thinking of placing airstreams on the burnt down property. He learns from Charmaine that the twins are both boys, and that Todd might be cheating on her from a hotel receipt. Mel's sister Joey goes through a brutal divorce, where she could lose her house. She manages to rekindle a relationship from her high school, and they decide to get married. After failing to make it to the wedding and the reception afterwards, Jack accepts his faults and decides to properly deal with his PTSD from war. He starts to meet with a therapist, and they discover from a paternity test that Jack is in fact the father, taken in by Vernon because he is in fact his grandson from another woman named Rose that Vernon dated in college. He is caught stealing drugs from the clinic. He admits that he has Huntington's disease, an incurable terminal diagnosis, meaning his small relationship with Lizzie is unable to progress because he could die at any moment. And Denny and Lizzie's relationship only hurts Ricky, so he takes up the offer and heads off to the Marines. Preparing to confront Vince, Preacher starts taking Aikido lessons and meets Julia. They start the day until Michelle comes back into his life. He helps knock out Vince and get Christopher back. Brady is stabbed in prison by Jimmy's brother because they knew that he snitched on them for the police to try and raid them. He is taken to the hospital and his bond is magically paid off. Not magical, because Calvin wants him to get back to work, now with Bree as more leverage. Jimmy is arrested once again for attempted murder, and takes a plea deal once Brady convinces him to snitch on Calvin. They find a knife from the night that Jack was shot. He had stabbed Vince, and Vince had shot him because he didn't want Jack to call Preacher and notify him that he was searching for them. Brady is exonerated, and once the police begin to track down fugitive Calvin, he commits suicide by blowing up his boat. But they haven't found the corpse yet. Cameron oversteps and advises Mel against pursuing a relationship with Jack because he is a troubling alcoholic, not knowing that Jack is seeking help. Shocked at this conversation, she leaves and wants to keep their conversation strictly co-worker. This awkwardness only festers, and Cameron decides to resign. Dr. Vernon is fine with it just being him and Mel, back like the good old times, even if Mel needs bed support for her pregnancy, because it is high risk, as she had a stillborn in the past. But Mel is adamant that the clinic needs 2 doctors, and decides to resign instead. Mel and Jack decide to get engaged, and she says yes, and they celebrate with Nick and Joe Ellen, even inviting over Melissa, Nick's sister. They're rushed off as Charmaine has an accident. She is scared that Todd is leaving her, thinking that she is getting punished for pretending that the twins are Jack's. She admits that the twins are just from a one-night stand. Detective Mike arrives on the scene and arrests Vince for kidnapping and attempted murder. Michelle admits that after fleeing to Virgin River to escape west, it is now all tainted with his memory. She leaves Preacher and Virgin River behind, with Christopher to start a new life. After a troubling couple of weeks, they manage to forgive Charmaine, emphasizing with how difficult it would have been to carry the twins on her own. As a high-risk pregnancy, Mel has a fatal miscarriage and they lose the baby. They decide to work on their relationship before trying again. Bree's ex, the abusive boyfriend that had raped her, resurfaces to try and get her to sign an NDA. She testifies against him with other victims and he is arrested. Preacher meets Kaya, a firefighter. They hit it off and fall in love. She takes a position in Virgin River to stay with Preacher, but during a shift, they recover a body, Wes Logan, not knowing that Preacher is somewhat related to this death. Lizzie thinks about leaving Virgin River and returning to school. She and Denny discuss his Huntington's disease. She doesn't care that he could pass at any moment, but she just wants to love him for now. They hook up a couple times and she gets pregnant. They decide to keep the baby, discovering that Melissa is the head of the drug operation that took over after Calvin died. Shocking Jack, Brady, Mike and Bree set up a sting operation to catch her. It is successful, but Mike gets injured in the process. Also, Bree breaks up with Brady. She wants a stable relationship, and the dealings with the cartels, drugs, and lying is just too much to deal with. Cameron leaves the clinic after bumping heads with Vernon too much, and Mel returns. After a short relationship with Muriel as his girlfriend, Cameron decides to move forward from Virgin River and find a new place to call home. From love letters, Mel figures out that her father, that abandoned her at birth, is living in Virgin River. Everett doesn't want to be a part of her life. She helps Charmaine give birth to the twins, and Calvin is revealed to be the father. He survived the explosion and came out of hiding after Melissa was arrested. But knowing Calvin's shady dealings, Mel agrees not to mention that Calvin is the father to anyone. They share a lovely holiday until Everett comes by Mel's house to apologize. He explains that he has something devastating to tell her. This is where the series ends. Make sure to subscribe, and for more, watch this.